So this one, if you're making a list of things to study, I would put this on the bottom of the list. Yeah. So basically we're going to run through human lifespan and talk about how people grow and change as they age. Okay. So these are the basic categories that we throw people into: infants up to 1 year, toddlers from 1 to 3, preschool age 3 to 5, school 6 to 12, adolescent, etc., etc. Realize that this is a continuum, right? We like to categorize things, so we break it up into categories. But there's, not a ton of difference, obviously, between an 11-month-old here and a 12 or 14-month-old, here. So it's a continuum. Okay, so infancy, birth to 1 year. So you've all been here, but you probably don't remember it very much. So growing really fast, developing as fast as any period that you're alive. So at birth, kids weigh on average, 6.6 to 7.7 pounds. That's just kind of like a median-ish number there. Obviously, there's lighter weight kids and there's heavier kids. As far as growth rate goes, though, that is doubling by 6 months and has tripled by 12 months. Their heads are really big, especially at the younger ages. They can't even hold their heads up. You keep their little heads in your hand. Little narrow airways, pretty easily obstructed airways. They're going to be more belly breathers. They breathe more through their nose. So they're not taking big gaspy breaths. They're using their bellies and sucking air in through their nose. When they're first born, you get some antibodies passed from mother to the child. It kind of gives their immune system a jump start. If the kid is breastfed for a while, then you'll get a few more antibodies there. The bones in the kid's skull aren't exactly fused like they are in an adult. This helps them get through the birth canal a little bit, if they're a little bit more malleable. The spaces in between the bones are called fontanelles. They're basically little soft spots in the kid's head. If you see those things bulging, that can indicate some kind of head injury where the brain is pressing out against there. If they're sunken, then that might indicate dehydration. This isn't a real obvious thing, but if you're looking close for it, you might find it. So yeah, when kids pop out, they're obviously just not able to control much, do much, but by the end of that year, most kids are walking, if not talking. So we get into the toddler phase. So at about 12 months here, again, they're wandering around, toddling into things. So all of their general systems are starting to develop now. They're getting teeth. They start to understand cause and effect. So if I poke the cat, it runs away screaming kind of thing, or whatever. They can go through phases as far as like separation anxiety. When they're pretty little, it doesn't matter who's holding them, as long as somebody is. Not that they can't tell the difference between adults, it's just somewhere in this range, in 12 to 36 months, they start really identifying with somebody and not being happy when that somebody isn't there. Starting to role play, starting to play more in general. These kids, it's still best to do your evaluations and treatments when they're sitting with mom or dad. They're gonna get freaked out if you haul off in an ambulance on their own, unless they're really sick. So yeah, both this age category and the earlier one, we're usually transporting mom or dad and the kid. Sometimes mom or dad holding the kid and, you know, sitting on a gurney kind of thing. And the parent is going to be the one that you're mostly talking to get, you know, what's going on. Especially the younger kids aren't going to be able to tell you, you know, they've been sick for a week or whatever and vomiting and that kind of thing. And so it's, you're interviewing the adults to figure out what's going on. Okay, and then up 3 to 5 years. So we call this preschool age because kind of, you know, 4 or 5 years. They start ending up in preschools, learning stuff, continuing to develop. And then they might start having friends, social skills. It's about in this age that they're going to start getting more nervous about strange people and like medical procedures. They'll have been to enough doctor's appointments. They'll probably have been a negative association with those things because that's where they get their shots and crazy weird things happening. So yeah, be ready for them to have a little bit more of a negative reaction to a healthcare provider. School age, 6 to 12. So, you know, most kids have entered kindergarten at age 5 or 6. So they're getting more and more independent, can do more and more things on their own. Start losing their baby teeth, which happens over a period of a year or 2. They need less general supervision. They've been wiping their own butts for a few years now. They've got some decision-making skills, but not great decision-making skills. They'd still eat candy and whatever for every meal if you let them. Friend groups are becoming more important. adolescents. So 13 to 18. This is probably the age group that you all have just left, or maybe you're at the tail end of anyway. So you're going through puberty, growth spurt, sexual maturity, all those fun things. Movement towards independence. Certainly a lot more care about what other people think. Males in this group can be self-destructive. Maybe a gentle way of putting it, I don't know. Start get a code of ethics. I don't know if often is the right word for injured there because of risk taking, but we certainly do see adolescents injured. Most of the time they're gonna take care of it themselves. Call mom or dad and get them to take them to the hospital. Work it out on their own. It's got to be fairly bad before ambulance is called most of the time. Depending on what they were doing when they injured themselves, they might not want to exactly tell you what happened. But more often, if you can get them out of whatever peer group they're in, and they'll tell you what's going on. All right, then you get into early adulthood. So you left the nest, off doing your own things. This is your period where you get into peak physical condition. So after this, it's all downhill. You're getting married, starting a family, go through all those experiences. For this age group, and everyone up to this too, accidents are the leading cause of death. So people aren't getting sick and dying. They're getting in car accidents mainly. Is the leading cause of death for all the age groups up to this one. Middle adulthood, so 41 to 60 years. So again, we peaked in the last category, so things are going downhill now. More and more people need some kind of vision correction, contacts or glasses. You start to see the earliest cases of cancer and heart disease. So 40 to 60 is still reasonably young for cancer and heart disease to pop up, but you get into the late 50s, that's not crazy young. Your metabolism slows down, and so weight control is more difficult. For people in this age bracket that had kids, when you get up to mid-50s, those kids are off to school, most likely off to college. So you get empty nest syndrome, and folks that don't have enough to do, are bored. Also, the parents of this age group are starting to be, in their 70s. And so you got to care for elderly patients, elderly parents. And late adulthood, so they're 61 years and older. So again, declining body systems, becoming less efficient. Depending on how you've lived the earlier parts of your life, and whether you got to keep working forever or start to retire here in this group. So, financial burdens, people or died at this point, so you're dealing with more death and dying. Your parents at this point are almost certainly, but more than likely have died.
That was a depressing note to end on.
Well, it's kids playing on the beach. Yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk more about geriatrics and stuff. What was it? Do you have a question? Sorry.
No.
And we'll talk about pediatrics and stuff in its own chapter. We don't really talk about adolescence. There isn't a specific chapter on adolescence and early adulthood. I guess you could consider the trauma and whatever chapters to be the standard for that age group, because again, most likely reason that we're going to see somebody in the younger to middle age is just because they injured themselves doing something